This segment is all about Kenneth Burke.
Okay, one of my favorite theories to teach and theorists is Kenneth Burke. He can be really challenging to encounter for the first time, but his ideas are so rich about what we are. He kind of his jumping off point is what's our human nature, like, and then why do we construct messages, and why do we create conflicts or work our way out of conflicts and think about symbols and encounters in really interesting ways. So you have to start with Burke with kind of one of his fundamental assumptions about us as human beings. And that is that we are, as he says, goaded by the spirit of hierarchy. And he says we're also rotten with perfection. So what does that mean? It means that we like things to be orderly, right? The hierarchy. We want to know why things are the way they are. And once we've got it, we want it to stay that way. We want to understand that order. So if something messes up, Burke says, there's kind of this, if somebody says, no, that's not the way it should be, then that messes up our sense of order. So then we feel like we're guilty, the system's kind of been polluted. What do we do to try? We get this whole sense of conflict that we've got to do something to blame somebody for messing it up so that we can get back to feeling comfortable with our hierarchy again, with our sense of order. So there's all this interesting thing that Burke says is these kind of cycles that we go through when somebody, whether it's a protest movement, says, no, the system is wrong, or whether somebody says to us, we don't like your idea, right, even on an interpersonal level, we go through a whole kind of defensive sort of notion of how do I rescue this? How do I fix my image, right? Do I take it on myself and say, you're right, I was wrong, and yes, we need to fix this? Or do I blame somebody? And for Burke, we often blame somebody. And that's what he calls the scapegoating, right? So we find a scapegoat, we put all the blame over here, and then we get rid of that scapegoat, either literally or figuratively, right? We remove them, and then we can go on. So let me give you an example of like a true case, right? And it's a pretty dramatic one, right? The shootings at Columbine High School, right, back in, several years ago. So there's this really interesting article by a communication scholar where she analyzes how the media kind of created the two perpetrators, whose names I'm forgetting at the moment, but as sort of these evil monsters, right, that were influenced by rock and roll music, and they were these goth characters, and they were dark. And so we put all the blame for them on like them being these individually bad people. And what she argues is that deflected attention away from what really needed to be fixed was, the whole system of bullying in high schools and the whole culture that kind of, and maybe the family situation that those young men were in. But if we make them just out as these evil characters, we can say, okay, well, they're gone, problem solved, right? And so then we can just go back to the way things were again, and we can feel like it's orderly. But of course, we haven't fixed what was wrong, right? So we continue to see those kind of situations happen, but we continue to scapegoat the individual rather than look at the larger problem. And that's kind of what makes this whole idea of guilt and purification, right? So if we get rid of the scapegoat, we purify ourselves, then we've redeemed our sense of order again, and then we can go on until it happens again, right? Which is what makes that whole system, that theory, so interesting.